Hello, good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening. I hope you are well wherever you are tuning in. I hope you can hear me. Checking my tech all the time, always checking this tech. 1 second, let's just make sure that we are actually live on all of our platforms. Oh, perfect. Got the notification. We are live, at least on LinkedIn for sure. Hopefully those of you who are tuning in on Facebook, you're able to hear and see me as well. Let me know in the chat. And for all of you who are joining on the replay, you are also welcome. I am thrilled to be here this evening to talk with you about the Impact Triad. The Impact Triad. Three areas every leader must focus on for success. I love it. I'm so excited. I'm thrilled to be here. Glad that you are here also. If you are new to me, my name is Nkoyo Efyong Lewis. I am the founder and chief impact strategist at Ibanisong Solutions, where we sequence possibility alongside social impact leaders. And I'm thrilled. We really focus on doing this by helping leaders turn their audacious ideas into actionable steps that generate revenue, engage stakeholders, and ultimately transform the world. And that is truly, I believe, my life calling and purpose. From when I was young until now, I have always been looking for ways to help people find more purpose, find more connection, find more ways to be impactful during the time that they are here on Earth. And so, I am absolutely super duper thrilled to have this conversation. If I'm a little choppy, it's because my tech is doing all kinds of things. It's a little delayed and lagged on my end. So hopefully it's coming through clearly for you all. Just a quick little housekeeping. One, I am making the commitment to show up live here a couple times a week. So usually on Thursdays around 9:15 after I put my children to bed so they're not screaming in the background distracting me. I plan to come here and be live and ready to chat with you about ways that we can just take our leadership to an audacious level and really make sure that we're meeting the modern moment. If you've been under a rock, perhaps you haven't realized that the world has shifted. Things have significantly changed. We have rapid advances in technology. We have changing demographics, cultural norms colliding and creating new norms and expectations. And I truly believe that if we are going to usher in the future of work, if we're going to be a part of the solution and have an impact that is enduring, we have to be intentional about growing ourselves as leaders and leading for a future that is unknown and in some instances unknowable. How many of you know that change is constant? Right? We hear that all the time. But so many of the top futurists will add in and key here that change is not only constant, it is rapidly accelerating, meaning the rate of change is far more frequent now than it has ever been at any point in time. And it will continue to accelerate. And so as leaders, we have to learn the skill of being agile and adaptable. And we also have to make sure that we're managing our own responses to change and transition and shifts, etc. Because as the leader, you are the thermostat, right? You set the temperature. Like everything comes from you, and that ultimately everything is your fault. You're responsible for it too. So it's a tremendous point of privilege and power that we're in. And I think it's so important as we're thinking about a future world where so many of our social norms will no longer be sufficient, will no longer meet the moment, that we are continuing to adapt ourselves and finding ways to develop new skills to manage in a future that we won't always be able to predict. And how many of you find that exciting? I happen to be thrilled by that. And it may be because I truly enjoy what I call the messy middle, that transition point where we're trying to figure out what we keep and what we chuck and what we create that's brand new together. And I believe that we are really in that space right now. And a lot of the work that I do at Ibani Song Solutions, a lot of the coaching and consulting and strategy work that I do with individuals and organizations that really want to capitalize on this moment is focused on figuring out what pieces we keep, what pieces we let go, and how we reimagine or imagine anew what else is there that can be created. I love to quote Priya Parker, who I had the opportunity to see speak when I was at a conference in Nashville. She wrote the book, The Art of Gathering. It's a great book. Definitely read it. She talks about how we're really in a space and time where we get to create what the future of work will be. And ultimately, the decisions that we make or don't make right now will determine what our children and their children's children come to understand about work and relationships and life. And if any of you have spent any time with our Gen Z friends, like, they are really pushing for something new and different. And I'm a millennial, so I truly believe that they got that inspiration from us. But I really love the way that they're moving it forward. And I'm a mom, proud mom to 2 Generation Alphas, and who knows what's coming next after that. So it is truly important for us to be thinking about all the generational differences in the workspace, along with cultural differences and just the different demands that technology has on all of our lives as we're thinking about growing a business or growing an organization and really having that deep impact. So again, today we are talking about the Impact Triad. 3 areas every leader must focus on for success. And so I'm going to spend some time and talk a little bit about what you should be looking at, what you should be thinking about at this moment in time. And then I'm also going to just offer to help you dig deeper and go further in the pursuit of audacious leadership and that exponential impact at the end of this conversation. So with that, we're going to go ahead and jump in. I don't know if I said this, but I definitely do some coaching, consulting, speaking, and strategy around this change management space, around leadership, and really around growth and making sure that we're building sustainable organizations, that our leadership has a legacy, and that we're thinking thoughtfully about that from even right now. So I'm a big proponent of succession planning. I help organizations go through a dynamic succession planning process. I work with organizations, particularly nonprofits, to develop their board to be more audacious and do what I like to call bend the law in the direction that it needs to go. We know the moral arc will get there, but some of us want to see it happen in our lifetime, okay? So I work with organizations that are really trying to move the needle forward for the communities and causes that they support. And that shows up in a couple of different ways, including the coaching and the consulting, working with individual leaders to just really unlock their audacious vision and really help them sequence the steps to getting there. So you'll hear a little bit more about that sprinkled throughout this conversation, but right now, let's get into it. Let me pull up my little notes over here because I'm not as fresh at 9 p.m. as I am at 9 a.m. Shout out to all my early morning folks. But anyway, so here we are, right? You want your organization to grow. You want the impact. You want the success. Maybe you want to be on the top 40 under 40, top 50 under 50, the Hall of Fame. Maybe you're trying to get a Nobel Peace Prize. Like, whatever it is, I'm here for all these big, bad, bold visions, right? Maybe trying to be in the history books as someone who's really changed the arc of something. You want to be the case study that other companies and organizations study. I love it. I'm here for it. How do we get there, right? And even if your goal is simply to make sure, this is a running joke for all of you educators out there. I'm a former 4th grade teacher, forever educator is what I'll say. You just want to make sure that the bathrooms at your school always have toilet paper, okay? It's the craziest problem that exists out there. I don't know what it is. You can't keep toilet paper or soap in our school bathrooms. That's a whole separate conversation for another time. But maybe your goal is something that seems so small as that, but is wildly impactful, right? So whatever the arc is of what you're trying to do, There's strategy, there's sequence, there's process that goes into these things. And so I am here to share with you, to impart with you, to implore you to believe, to persuade you that there are really 3 key areas that you have got to keep your mind and eyes on in order to ensure your success. And not just your day-to-day success, but that enduring type of success that builds on itself, that becomes transformational, that totally disrupts how things have done and like creates this world where no one could have imagined that life would have been the way it was outside, right? Like I have kids growing up who can't imagine what life would be like without a tablet or laptop or a cell phone, all these wild devices, right? And some of us remember when none of those things existed, right? We're looking for that type of change. And so if you're looking for something big and monumental like that, and even if you're looking for something small, there are really 3 key areas that you need to pay attention to. And I will tell you, this comes from over a decade, actually probably getting closer to 2 decades, of experience working with nonprofits. And I have worked with nonprofits as someone who worked for a nonprofit, someone who's a program director of a nonprofit, and then most recently representing nonprofits in the startup through growth space as a practicing attorney. Disclaimer, while I have a lot of legal knowledge, I only share information for educational purposes. None of this is to be construed as legal advice. And you should always contact a qualified attorney in your jurisdiction if you have further questions about some of the legal implications that come with running an organization and being the leader. With that, I'm going to jump in. The very first thing that you need to pay attention to in this Impact Triad is culture. Culture is the first and probably one of the most important areas you need to have your eyes, ears, feet, hands on as the leader. If you want to have exponential impact, incredible success, you want to feel good, you want others that work with you to feel good. Peter Drucker has a great quote that culture eats strategy for breakfast. And as a strategist, I absolutely believe this. You can have a bulletproof plan. You can have a strategy that's intricate, that has contingencies and all sorts of things baked into it, laid into it. If the culture is not right at your organization, none of those things will matter. It won't matter which consultant that you've hired, how much you've paid, how beautiful that report was, how long it was. None of those things will matter if the culture is not right. And I think this is also the important thing to think about in the change management space. My other favorite place to play is that when you're navigating through a transition, when you're leading change, so much of how it goes is related to the culture that surrounds the idea of change and how you are processing through change with others. And so when I think about culture, I think about culture for organizations as the way that it shows up, how you communicate, how your organization behaves internally and externally. I think a lot of times in the social impact space, our social entrepreneurs, our social enterprises, nonprofits, benefit corporations, you name it, B Corps, all of the above, do a really great job of mining their external reputation. They're good at building relationships. They're great at protecting their brands. They're great at being very clear about mission, vision, values externally. But sometimes the people internally don't feel the same warmth of the goals, the vision, the culture that you're purporting externally. And so I always like to make sure I'm talking with leaders that I share that culture isn't just what you project to other people outside of you. Although that's incredibly important, you want to protect that. We can talk about, how important, things like intellectual property, trademark, copyrights, all those types of things are to protect the external representation of the culture of your organization. But it's not so great, less impactful if the people who are doing the work with you have horrible things to say about you. Those are your brand ambassadors. Those are the people who are going to go to bat for you. And so you want to make sure that your culture is something that is consistent internally and externally. You can't be out here saying, you want to eradicate poverty, you want to close opportunity gaps, etc. And then those same issues are prevalent in how your promotion and hiring happens internally in your organization. That's a disconnect. People recognize that. They talk about it. Trust me, they talk about it. So you want to make sure that you're getting your culture together from the inside out. I often say to people all the time that I believe leadership is an inside job first. That if you haven't mastered yourself, if you're not able to manage your emotions, your triggers, etc., if you're not evolving and constantly investing in yourself, it's really hard to build a team that's doing the same. And so I think that the same thing with culture. If you want to have a certain culture, it starts from the inside out. You don't have to do as much branding and marketing and PR, etc., if you are truly living those values internally. So the best strategy in the world can't beat culture. So the first place that you really need to focus if you want to expand your impact exponentially is in the culture that you have in your organization, because it will impact positively or negatively every other shift or thing that you do. And so first and foremost, got to get the culture together. What impacts your culture? I think there are three really big things that impact culture. Actually, I might add a fourth at this point in time. Your mission. Like, what is it that you set out to do? Here at Ibani Song Solutions, we are very clear that our mission is to revolutionize the world of work one leader at a time. It is our goal to empower leaders across the world to believe that they can steward the type of change that they hope to see in the world, and that there are steps and strategies and support for them to be able to do that. We are laser focused on that. Which means that even when I don't want to show up online, or if I don't want to do certain things, like I remind myself of why we started in the first place, and truly believing that leadership, strong leadership, can create workplaces that are honoring and great and valuable for people, not just in a monetary transaction, but in the development, the growth, the culture, etc. And so just what would the world look like if people on balance enjoyed going to work and were engaged, as opposed to what we see now, right? So we're very clear that that is something that we care about. We have a vision. That's the second thing that I think impacts your culture. You know, what it is that you want to see, what it is that doesn't necessarily exist in the here and now, but you can put your eyes on it to believe that something like this could happen in the future. I believe, you know, in other areas, like in the education space, that we could truly have a world where every school is a quality school. Every single one of them is a good school. And you don't have to try to find your way into certain communities, because literally every school is a good school. That's a vision that I have for the future. And then the third thing that I would say that really impacts culture is your values. What is it that sets you apart, that are the non-negotiables for you in your life? And as the leader, how have you shared those within your organization and co-created those with the people that you're working with? Because it's very hard to do work that's authentic, that is filled with integrity, if people are out of alignment with their values. And I actually believe that that's why we're seeing a lot more quiet quitting, and some, you know, not so quiet quitting, attrition, turnover, etc., because we're not always building organizations that continue to align with the values and vision that people have. And then the fourth little bonus thing that I would add, I should share. So, for example, at Ibani Song, our values are on leading with integrity. Like, we want to be integriful. That's not even a word, I just created it. But like, we want to be filled with integrity in all of the things that we do. That if you see it, if we said it, we stand by it. There's no, I'm saying this over here, but not over there. And our actions are in alignment with the things that we say that matter. We're about innovation. We truly believe that you have to grow and change, and figure out how you work with technology, work with changing norms, changing expectations, in order to be a choice solution in the future of work. And then we're also about impact. Like, if it's not going to lead to significant impact, sound impact, enduring impact, we don't want to be distracted by it. And so we are really guided by those values in the work that we do. And I think it's really important that your organization has values, and that you, leader, align those values with your organization, with your own personal values. I'll tell you, when I was practicing law, it was always the weirdest place because I would work with folks who would have to take on cases that maybe they didn't agree with, that didn't align with their values. And it was very hard for me to do that. It was very hard for me to show up and be like, I know that this isn't my value system, but I'm getting paid mightily to do it. Excuse me, so I'm going to figure it out. Some people can do that, others can't. You know, you just need to know where you are, know where your line is, and walk in your line. I truly believe if you walk in purpose and in alignment with your values, you will find not just wealth, but also wisdom. And I think that that is perhaps more valuable than any dollar amount. The fourth thing that I would add there that adds to or impacts culture is versatility. And I add this now because that little thing that happened 2019, I think it was, 2020, sorry, my son's first birthday happened and then the world shut down with COVID, really led a lot of people to think about how you can be versatile, how you might have multiple interests, how you might work from anywhere, any type of location, and how you can fit that in. And we're truly seeing with, quiet quitting and some of its other remnants, quiet promotion, quiet firing, all these different things, is that there is a desire for a certain level of flexibility. And I think that if you're thinking about culture, it actually is part of the equation now. So when we talk about that first area that you need to pay attention to in that impact triad is culture. Culture is impacted by your mission, vision, values, and versatility. Excuse me. The second thing in this impact triad that you need to be focused on is capacity. Capacity is your organization's capabilities and competences. Like, what are you actually able to do? What are the programs and services that you're able to deliver? Who is able to deliver those things? What skills, knowledge, mindset, beliefs, etc. do they have? Because all of that will impact how you're able to actually deliver and execute on whatever mission, vision that you have set out, and whatever the programs and services are that are supposed to be adding a value add to the community and causes that you serve. Great quote here by Andrina Sawyer. We don't have a blessings shortage. We have a capacity crisis. I love this because I could literally wax poetic on it and go lots of different places with it or with my thoughts about it. But I will leave it there. I'll leave you to marinate on it. Capacity really is making sure that your infrastructure supports your programs and services. So beyond having great people on your team and great ideas, how are you laying a foundation to ensure that those things are actually able to exist in the world, they're able to be executed? I often think about when I was practicing, I ran my own firm for several years before I stopped practicing and went mostly into speaking and coaching and consulting. And I would have these great conversations with clients, mostly social impact leaders or parents and students in education matters, about all the things that we were going to do and the vision and how we were going to get there and the steps. And then it would be time to go do the actual work. And sometimes the infrastructure supported being able to streamline the delivery of those services. And other times, that's why I got all these grays, it was a very stressful process. And so I think organizations, leaders, those of you in the social impact space, whether you're a nonprofit, benefit corporation, whatever, you need to think about and invest in your infrastructure. You cannot grow a wildly impactful organization that is sustainable, that's not burning people out, without a solid infrastructure. And I truly wish that philanthropy really understood and invested and appreciated this more, because we have a lot of nonprofits, a lot of founders who have great ideas, but they need investments in infrastructure to move forward. They need to figure out ways to access technology in a way that allows them to deliver services more impactfully across borders and boundaries, etc., particularly in this day and age. But it's often hard to get the resources to be able to pay for that tech update, to be able to get some of the software that will allow you to do more of what you need to do effectively, whether that's building relationships, fundraising, or actually, just the delivery of program services, or the paying of equitable, fair wages to people who are doing the work, right? But infrastructure absolutely matters. That is a piece of capacity. We have a capacity audit that we do. We also have a culture audit, honestly, and we look through that. Where is your organization right now? How are things going in terms of program and management and funding and leadership, governance, all of these different areas that will absolutely impact how well you are able to deliver on the promise that you're making to communities. That will be able to determine whether you're going to be able to show the type of impact that you're making in the first place to be able to generate more funds and engage the community alongside you in the process. And so capacity is the second thing that you really need to focus on, and it is also incredibly important. I think, again, if I was putting it in order, culture, because again, if that culture is not right, it's really hard to get all of the other pieces right. Capacity, really making sure that you have the infrastructure, you're thinking about that. Capacity is really comprised of, your people, your programs, and your processes. You need all three of those P's to really shore up and have a strong level of capacity so that you can really deliver the way that you need to, want to, hope to, in terms of being the change that you have sought to see in the world. The third and final thing that I will say will round out our Impact Triad, the 3 areas you need to focus on as a leader to be successful is, and this is going to be no surprise because I told you I'm a former attorney, compliance. Oh, I can't tell you how important compliance is, particularly for my nonprofit corporations and my benefit corporations also, right? Both are very regulated entity structures from a legal standpoint. And again, no legal advice, just legal information, educational purposes, just for your edification. If you need more details, etc., I encourage you to reach out to a nonprofit attorney, a benefit corporate, or social enterprise attorney who can really sort of help you think through how you walk through these things for your organization. Paul McNulty says, if you think compliance is expensive, try non-compliance. Hopefully, none of you who are watching here have had your tax-exempt status revoked because you perhaps didn't fill out your 990 forms like you were supposed to. Perhaps none of you got a letter from the Secretary of State from a different state because you were soliciting funds without having registered to solicit. Hopefully, no one has ever been accused by anyone in their organization of not following their bylaws, not following the law, misappropriating funds, all sorts of things that I have had the unique opportunity to see in the near decade that I have worked alongside nonprofits in a legal capacity. It can get not paying employment taxes, not paying people well, hiring, firing, promoting in ways that, contravene our laws. The list goes on and on. I can tell you all the horror stories, but I'm not going to sit in that space. I'm going to tell you that compliance is the thing that keeps you in business. Compliance is the thing that allows you to continue to be able to do the deep and important work that our private sector isn't doing, that our government isn't doing. And so it is so important that after you've gotten your culture together, that you have shored up your capacity, that you are laser focused on your compliance so that you can continue to do the things that you set out to do. It is always a tragedy for me to see a nonprofit go through some sort of expensive legal issue that, with better information and knowledge on the front end, they could have avoided or paid a far lesser amount. When I used to run my practice, I ran a subscription legal services. So I had nonprofits that were on a legal subscription so they could, predict their legal spend from month to month. And if they were something that was going to be over and above what they had anticipated, we could have a conversation about it. We could budget around that. We could open up projects and kind of figure that out in a way that made sense, because I was truly a proponent of proactive legal services. And I think that with compliance, we need to be more proactive, less reactive in terms of making sure that we're doing the things that we need to do to run our organizations. So whether you are the founder, executive director, CEO, you still need to have an eye for compliance. If you are on the board, if you are a board chair, board member, like you have a fiduciary duty to that organization. It is incumbent upon you, it is your responsibility to ensure that it is being governed well, that the resources are being allocated appropriately, that you're walking this fine line of sort of overseeing the organization without getting too into the weeds on the day-to-day in terms of management. And so compliance is so important for all of your key leaders to be thinking about and collaborating around. And these are really making sure that you are following the bylaws that you've set out and the whatever rules and regulations actually govern your organization. So for example, if you're a 501c3 nonprofit, you have gotten this amazing benefit of being tax exempt, which is almost unheard of in the United States. And so there are regulations and requirements that come along with that, and making sure that you know it or you have someone who's apprised of those things and who can really help you to navigate those areas. Making sure that you're filing your 990s like you need to be doing based on the size of your organization at the cadence that matters and is important for you. Making sure that you're careful about the type of speech and how much political speech you're doing depending on the type of nonprofit you are to ensure that you can maintain your tax exempt status. Other small things, if you're going to think about different revenue streams, which I think is very important for our social sector to be diversifying, that you're doing that in a way that doesn't put your tax exempt status at risk, doesn't expose you to unrelated business income tax, which can be very expensive for your organization and can potentially get you in a situation where your tax exempt status is revoked. I think it's making sure that you're not, doing, setting compensation in a way that it looks like people are getting almost like a kickback or additional bonuses, or like I'm slipping on the legal term for it right now, but like thinking about all these things, or at least knowing who to go to who can think about these things and remind you of what you need to be looking at is important in terms of compliance. What impacts compliance? Your bylaws. Particularly if you are a benefit corporation or a nonprofit corporation, your bylaws are really one of the founding documents around how you're supposed to be organized and running your organization. The laws and regulations that are just in play, every state has a nonprofit code. And so making sure that you're doing things that are in alignment with what nonprofit corporations are or are not allowed to do within your state. And that if you have tax exempt status, that you are also abiding by the federal regulations that are put out by the IRS that govern tax exempt organizations. And I think the other thing that really plays into your compliance, of course, is the policies, practices, and procedures that you have set up to do in your organization. And so also a really important place that I have often found, sometimes organizations get started and there are no real clear policies, which could get you into hot water once you grow and bring on new people, as your board should be expanding, as you should be hiring and bringing on new staff. A failure to have policies and procedures and practices can really impact capacity in some ways, but also just your compliance with what's expected of you as an organization and as the leader of an organization. So if you're in a place where you're like, yeah, I want to have massive success, I'm looking at these things, but I'm looking at my organization, we're kind of stunted, we're not really moving forward, we're not doing the things that I had expected or anticipated would happen perhaps overnight. I don't know, you might have been naive like myself when I got started in this space. If you are struggling to create the impact you desire, it's likely that you have a gap, you have an issue in one of these three areas. And I mentioned earlier, we have our 3C organizational health audit that we do for organizations to really help them see what areas they're really strong in and what places we need to really push and press to make sure that we're set up to do the important or impactful work that we need to do. And so we love to help organizations sort of get a 360 idea of what is going on in their space so they can be ready for massive impact, and then help them build out the strategy that they need. So for some, it may be helping them to build out a certain set of plan, or helping them to really get into their policies and procedures and ensure that they are aligned with the vision, values, and versatility that they are looking for in their organization. You like how I did that? All of these things really play into and touch upon each other. But once I truly think you find which bucket is your strength and which bucket is a place to improve, it makes it a lot easier then to create the plan, to actually sequence the possibility, the steps to getting to that wildly audacious vision that you have for your organization. And so just to recap, again, in our Impact Triad, the 3 areas where every leader needs to focus to make sure that they are going to get the success they desire, we want to have the culture set. Culture eats strategy for breakfast any given day. So it's really important if you're like, well, my organization is not where I had hoped we would be at this point in time. One of the first places to look is your culture. Do people feel engaged and empowered and excited to be a part of the work? Are you building something that is participatory in nature, not just internally with your team, but also with the community and cause that you are supporting? When I used to talk about this in the legal space and with lawyers, I would always talk about, moving from, oh, I'm here on behalf of this community, to I'm here alongside this community, because nobody likes things to be done to them or for them. Everyone wants a level of agency, wants a level of participation, and that is internal to your staff as well. They need to have that buy-in and understanding about what's in it for them, and so does your community. You want to make sure that you have your capacity together, because a crisis in capacity will keep you playing small. If you cannot get your people, your programs, and your processes together, it's going to be really hard to scale your impact. And I know that if you're here listening to this, if you've been in any type of lead audacious leadership, anything, we're out here trying to do something big, bad, and bold. So we're not out here for small goals. We're out here for legendary impact. And so you got to get that capacity together. We have to figure out how to build the infrastructure so that we can support more work, more challenges, more opportunities to create solutions, to bring others into the fold and really create change alongside the communities and causes that we support. And then last, and certainly not least, is compliance, right? Non-compliance is expensive. It is expensive to have to defend yourself against a lawsuit for any type of employment matter. That happens to be one of the biggest legal issues that happens with nonprofits, is employment matters. Making sure that you are going through the employment life cycle with your team in a way that's honoring of them as people, honestly, but also that, stays within the bounds of the law. Making sure that you're filing your 990s so that you don't get auto-revoked and have to go through a process of having to try to get your status reinstated, right? That's money and time and resources that could be allocated to something more useful if we have a process and checks and balances in place to make sure that we're doing the things that we need to do. So you want to make sure that you keep all of your regulatory ducks in a row so that you can spend more of your time focused on the things that really matter. I have a great mentor who will often say, compliance is the floor. Like, that's the bare minimum that we're talking about here, right? So that is literally like a little bit up from step one. And if you're going to have truly impactful organization, if you're going to fuel transformational change throughout the world, we got to get that compliance piece solid and set up. So if this was helpful, definitely leave me a comment. Let me know. Like, share, tell 2 or 3 of your friends in the nonprofit space, social enterprise space, benefit corporation space to check out our brand here, to follow us on social. I'm here on LinkedIn and Facebook under Nkoyo F. Young Lewis. You can find me. I am on all the other social platforms at Nkoyo Speaks. I will be showing up live. I think I'm going to try to do every Tuesday, Thursday, and maybe Saturday or Sunday or something like that to really get in here and make sure that you're getting the information that you need. But I'm going to be honest, right? This free stuff is good, free information. I think there's a place and space for it. But if you really want transformation, if you're really ready to move your organization forward, you have to invest. You have to invest in the right people and tools, etc., to move your organization forward. So if you're in this space and you're thinking, man, I really do want to figure out where my organization is struggling, what we've got going on, how we can create a plan and a strategy to get from where we are to that audacious future that we see, I invite you to book a call. You can get to that link on all of my platforms. There's a book a call. It's a free discovery call. We can sit down and talk about what's going on with your organization, what challenges you're feeling, what opportunities you're seeking out, and determine whether we're a good fit to work together to help you get to those goals. It is truly our desire to help more leaders, 1 million worldwide, take their organizations to the absolute next level, to what I like to call the most audacious level, and allow others to follow us. Because sometimes what happens when there's a lot of change is everybody gets scared and doesn't do anything, and looks at what their neighbors are doing and kind of does a little bit. But I really want to push those of you who are bold and brave and courageous enough to lead audaciously forward, to start forging the path. And with a guide like myself who's had a ton of experience seeing where some of these things go off the rails from both a legal standpoint, from a leadership standpoint, and from a org development programmatic standpoint, I am confident that I can help you deliver and start forging a path that has enough calculated risk to get you to where you want to go. And so if that is something that you're interested in, I would invite you to book a call. I always invite you to join our, sorry, my little thing is not working. Oh, wrong one. Oh, of course, and now it's frozen. To join an Audacious Leadership Chat. They happen the third Tuesday of every month. So our next one is coming up on the 16th, I want to say, of this month. We're actually going to get back to talking about our audacious vision, because at the end of the month, we're actually going to do a 5-day challenge for leaders, how to unleash your audacious vision and turn your ideas into impact. I am so excited. I stayed up so late last night working on some of the content for that. And it is going to be so good for those of you who opt into taking that journey. With that, I am going to depart with you. I hope you have a wonderful night. Again, if this was useful, like, share, send a couple of your friends who are in nonprofits, in the leadership space, over to the platform so they can take a peek and see some of our other material. Join the Audacious Leadership Chat. Book a call. Oh my gosh, I'm doing too many call to actions. But nonetheless, it's been my pleasure to get up here and chat and share some of my knowledge from over a decade of working in the social impact space. And with that, I hope that you just continue to lead audaciously. The future needs us. It needs us to be bold. It needs us to be brave. It needs us to be daring and courageous, and to be convicted enough in that vision that we have to walk it out, to do the steps that it will take to actually lead to the changed outcomes that we're looking for. So with that, I bid you adieu. I hope you have a wonderful night or morning, whatever you are turning this in, and take care. Be well.